Welcome back to another Afro-Korean love story. The crystal wine glass shattered against the plush velvet booth, the sharp crack signaling the end of Nia Thompson's freedom. In 5 seconds, a clumsy mistake turned a struggling waitress into the property of Seoul's most dangerous crime lord. What is the price of a spill when you have $12 to your name, a dying mother to save, and no way out? She was invisible, broke, a desperate daughter drowning in debt, now kneeling on wine-soaked carpet before the predator who held her life in his hands. A crisp white shirt stained red like blood, a gaze cold enough to freeze the room. The damage was done. No bill was presented. One demand. This is how Nia discovered that when you can't pay with money, you are the payment. The heavy thud of the armored door sealing shut cut off the sounds of the city, leaving Nia in a terrifying, hermetically sealed silence. The interior of the SUV smelled of rich leather and the faint, metallic scent of ozone. Outside, the world was moving, traffic lights blurring past the tinted glass, but inside, time felt suspended. Seo Min-Jae sat beside her, legs crossed, scrolling through a tablet as if he hadn't just abducted a woman from her shift. The indifference was worse than anger. It made her feel small, like a piece of luggage he had tossed into the backseat. "I can pay you back," Nia blurted out, her voice trembling but desperate to fill the suffocating quiet. She twisted the fabric of her apron, her knuckles white. "I know it looked expensive. I can set up a payment plan. $50 a week. I'll pick up extra shifts at the diner. I'll sign a promissory note right now." Min-Jae paused. He didn't look up from the screen, but a low, dry sound vibrated in his chest, a laugh devoid of humor. $50, he repeated, tasting the words like cheap wine. He finally turned to her, his dark eyes sweeping over her frantic expression with chilling detachment. The shirt was bespoke, woven from Italian silk. $5,000. At your proposed rate, you would clear the principal debt in 2 years. Nia's stomach bottomed out. $5,000. I can do more. I promise. You are missing the point, Miss Thompson, he said, his voice smooth and lethal. The shirt is irrelevant. You disrupted my evening. You embarrassed me before my associates. In my world, time is the most expensive currency, and you have wasted a significant amount of mine. He held out a hand, palm open. Phone. Nia blinked, clutching her pocket. What? Phone, keys, ID. Now. The command wasn't shouted, but the authority in his tone brooked no argument. I need my phone. My mother calls me at. You have no mother tonight. You have no home to return to, so you do not need keys. And you have no identity other than the one I assign you. He snapped his fingers, a sharp crack in the quiet cabin. Give them to me, or my driver will pull over, and I will have you stripped and searched on the side of the road. Your choice. With shaking hands, Nia pulled her cracked smartphone and her small ring of keys from her apron. She placed them in his large, waiting palm. It felt like surrendering her lifeline. Min-Jae didn't even look at the items. He lowered the window an inch and dropped them. Nia watched in horror as her keys and phone bounced onto the asphalt, disappearing into the dark rush of traffic behind them. Consider that the first installment of interest, Min-Jae said, rolling the window back up as the lock clicked into place. You don't exist anymore, Nia. Not until I say you do. The Seo estate rose from the darkness like a monolith of glass and steel, surrounded by walls high enough to keep the world out, and secrets in. As the armored SUV crunched over the gravel driveway, Nia stared up at the brutalist architecture. It didn't look like a home, it looked like a mausoleum for the living. The car stopped, and the door was opened by a guard who refused to meet her eyes. Min-Jae stepped out first, adjusting his cuffs. He didn't look back at her. He didn't need to. He knew she had nowhere to run. He ascended the stone steps and vanished into the shadowy interior, leaving her shivering in the night air until an older woman in a severe black suit stepped onto the porch. Come, the woman said. It wasn't an invitation, it was a directive. Inside, the house was a cavern of marble and silence. The air was chilled, smelling faintly of antiseptic and expensive lilies. As Nia followed the woman, introduced only as Ms. Choi, down the long, echoing hallway, she noticed the other staff members. A maid polishing a vase froze as they passed, her eyes fixed on the floor. A guard by the stairwell stiffened, his hand hovering near his belt. The fear here was palpable, a heavy fog that clung to the walls. Min-Jae wasn't just their employer, he was their weather system, and they were all terrified of the storm. Ms. Choi opened a door on the second floor, revealing a room that was stark, immaculate, and devoid of warmth. On the bed lay a neat stack of fabric. Shower. Change. Burn what you are wearing, Ms. Choi ordered, pointing to the pile. This is a respectable house. We do not wear filth here. Nia fingered the fabric. It was a uniform, slate gray, high-collared, and tailored. It was higher quality than anything she had ever owned, yet it felt heavier than chains. What am I supposed to do? Nia asked, her voice barely a whisper. I've never been I don't know the protocols. Ms. Choi's expression softened imperceptibly, just for a second, before hardening again. You keep your head down. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not look Mr. Seo in the eye. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. And there is one final rule. The most important one. She pointed toward the end of the corridor, where a set of double mahogany doors stood imposing and shut. The housekeeping staff is forbidden from entering the master's private office. No one goes in. Not to clean, not to deliver messages, not to breathe. Ms. Choi looked at Nia, her gaze weighted with pity and warning. Except you. From now on, the condition of that room is your sole responsibility. Whatever you see in there, whatever you hear, it stays in there. Do you understand? Nia looked at the dark wood doors. They felt like the entrance to a dragon's den. I understand, Nia breathed. Good, Ms. Choi said, turning to leave. Welcome to hell, child. Try not to let him break you. The double mahogany doors loomed in the dim corridor light, silent sentinels guarding the heart of the house. It was past 2 in the morning, but the light under the crack suggested the master of the estate never slept. Nia balanced the heavy silver tray on one hand, the crystal decanter of whiskey clinking softly against the glass. She knocked once. No answer. Taking a steadying breath, she pushed the door open. The office was a cavern of shadows and smoke, illuminated only by a green banker's lamp on the massive ebony desk. Seo Min-Jae sat behind it, his silhouette rigid against the high-backed leather chair. He didn't look up as she entered, his focus intent on his right hand, which hovered over a pristine white towel. As Nia moved closer, the metallic scent of copper hit her before the smell of the whiskey. Min-Jae's knuckles were split open, raw and weeping blood. The dark crimson dripped steadily onto the towel, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the room. He wasn't grimacing, he was simply staring at the damage with clinical detachment, as if the hand belonged to someone else. Leave it, he commanded, his voice rougher than usual. He didn't mean the injury, he meant the drink. Nia set the tray down on a side table. Her instinct screamed at her to leave, to run back to the safety of her small room. But she froze, her eyes locked on the jagged cut across his knuckles. It looked deep. Infected, if left alone. You need stitches, she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Min-Jae's head snapped up. His eyes were predatory, narrowing at her audacity. I didn't ask for a diagnosis. It will stain the paperwork, Nia said quietly. She wasn't trying to be brave, she was just practical. She had spent years patching up her clumsy mother and bandaging cuts from broken dishes in the diner kitchen. Blood didn't scare her, waste did. Without waiting for his permission, she scanned the room, spotting a bathroom door adjoining the office. She disappeared inside and returned a moment later with a damp cloth and a small first aid box she'd found under the sink. Min-Jae watched her, his body tense, ready to strike. When she approached the desk, he didn't move his hand. This will sting, she murmured. She took his hand in hers. The size difference was jarring, his palm was broad, calloused, and radiated a terrifying heat. Her fingers were cool and trembling slightly. As she dabbed the wet cloth against the raw skin, Min-Jae hissed, a sharp intake of breath through his teeth. You were bold for a woman who was trembling an hour ago, he observed, his voice low, vibrating through the small space between them. I'm used to cleaning up messes, Nia replied, her focus entirely on winding the gauze around his hand. She worked efficiently, her movements practiced and gentle. For the first time, the oppressive weight of his authority shifted. He wasn't the monster in the suit, and she wasn't the debt. He was just a man who bled, and she was the only one brave enough to stop it. She tied the bandage off and finally looked up. Min-Jae was watching her, his expression unreadable, but the cold distance in his eyes had cracked, replaced by a dark, simmering curiosity. He didn't pull his hand away. The library air was thick enough to choke on, a haze of expensive cigar smoke and the heavy, cloying scent of amber whiskey. 5 men sat around the mahogany poker table, their piles of chips representing more money than Nia would see in 10 lifetimes. She moved around the perimeter like a shadow, refilling tumblers of scotch, her eyes fixed on the Persian rug. Fold, a heavy-set man grunted, tossing his cards. Nia stepped forward to top off the glass of the man on Min-Jae's left, Director Han, a man with wet lips and wandering eyes. As she poured, the amber liquid swirling into the crystal, Han's hand shot out. He didn't reach for his drink. He gripped Nia's wrist, his fingers digging into her skin, pulling her off balance. Min-Jae, Han slurred, his gaze raking over Nia's uniform with disgusting familiarity. You didn't tell us you had new entertainment. How much for an hour? Or is she included in the buy-in? The room went deathly silent. Nia froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She tried to pull back, but Han's grip tightened, his thumb rubbing against her pulse. Let go, she whispered, terror seizing her throat. Feisty, Han laughed, looking around the table for validation. I like them feisty. Min-Jae didn't look up from his cards. He slowly laid down a royal flush, the cards hitting the felt with a soft thwip. Then, with terrifying speed, his hand shot out. He didn't strike Han. He simply clamped his hand over the director's fingers that were clutching Nia. With a calm, deliberate motion, Min-Jae twisted. A sickening crack echoed through the library, the wet snap of bone breaking. Han screamed, releasing Nia instantly as he doubled over, clutching his mangled index finger. The other men at the table recoiled, pushing their chairs back, but Min-Jae didn't even rise from his seat. He picked up a silk napkin and wiped his hand, his expression bored, as if he had just swatted a fly. You misunderstand the nature of my assets, Director, Min-Jae said, his voice dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. He looked at the sobbing man, then shifted his dark gaze to Nia, who was trembling against the bookshelf. She is not an employee. She is not a whore, Min-Jae stated, his eyes locking onto hers with possessive intensity. She is a debt, my debt, and you do not touch what is mine. He turned back to the table, tossing a chip onto the pile. Get him out of here. He's bleeding on my carpet. As guards dragged the wailing man out, Nia stared at Min-Jae. Her heart was still racing, but the fear had shifted. For the first time in her life, the monster in the room wasn't coming for her. He was standing between her and the world, a wall of violence that kept everyone else out. She wasn't free, but in that terrifying moment, she was safe. Sundays at the estate were unnerving. The usual hum of security details and arriving associates vanished, leaving the massive house suspended in a heavy, golden silence. It was the only day the staff made themselves scarce, leaving Nia alone with the ghosts of the empty hallways. She sat on the floor of the library, hidden behind a high-backed armchair, the house tablet resting on her knees. She shouldn't have checked. She knew she shouldn't have logged into the hospital's billing portal, but the silence had let her thoughts drift to her mother, and the anxiety had won. Red text glared back at her. Overdue. Final notice. The numbers blurred as tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging. She was trapped in this gilded cage, safe and fed, while her mother was likely being moved to a charity ward. I wasn't aware I paid you to weep. Nia scrambled up, nearly dropping the tablet. Min-Jae stood in the doorway, wearing a loose linen shirt instead of his usual armor of suits. He looked softer, less like a weapon, though his eyes remained sharp. I'm sorry, she stammered, wiping her cheeks frantically. I was just checking on my mother. Min-Jae walked over, the floorboards silent under his bare feet. He took the tablet from her trembling hands. Nia held her breath, expecting a reprimand for unauthorized use. Instead, he stared at the screen, his eyes scanning the brutal list of charges: chemotherapy, dialysis, room fees. He tapped the screen once, darkening it, and set it on the desk. Go fetch the 82 Margot. Nia blinked, the whiplash of his mood confusing her. The red one. The one you wore on your knees 3 weeks ago, he said, his voice flat. She hurried to the bar cart, her hands shaking as she poured the dark crimson liquid into a crystal glass. The smell of it made her nauseous. It smelled like that night, like fear and debt. She handed it to him, bracing for him to dismiss her. Min-Jae took a sip and barely suppressed a grimace. He swirled the liquid, staring at it with undisguised disdain. "It's awful," he murmured. Nia frowned, forgetting herself for a moment. "Sir, the wine," he said, setting the glass down with a heavy clink. "It tastes like dirt and old pennies. I detest it." "Then, why do you drink it?" Nia asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Min-Jae looked at her, and for a second, the mask slipped. He looked tired. "Because monsters are expected to have refined tastes. It is part of the costume. If I drink what I like, they think I am weak. If I drink this, they think I am a king." He pushed the glass away. "Take it away. Pour it down the sink." Nia took the glass, a strange warmth blooming in her chest at the confession. He was performing, just like her. As she turned to leave, Min-Jae picked up the tablet again. "Nia," he called out softly. She paused at the door. "Yes, sir. Do not let me catch you crying over numbers again. It is unbecoming." She nodded and left. Alone in the room, Min-Jae unlocked the tablet. He stared at the hospital balance for a heartbeat, then tapped pay full amount. He closed the screen, the transaction silent, invisible, and absolute. The garden was the only place where the estate felt less like a prison and more like a home. Under the cover of twilight, Nia walked along the gravel path, the scent of jasmine heavy in the cool air. The high walls that surrounded the property usually hummed with the invisible electricity of motion sensors and cameras, a comforting, if oppressive, buzz of safety. But tonight, the hum was gone. The silence was sudden and absolute. Nia froze, the hair on her arms standing up. A shadow detached itself from the trellis of ivy to her right, not a guard, not Min-Jae. The figure was dressed in matte black, a balaclava obscuring his face, moving with a fluid, predatory grace that made her blood turn to ice. Nia stumbled back, her heel catching on a paving stone. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. He lunged. Nia didn't scream, the sound died in her throat. She scrambled backward, her hand blindly grasping for anything to use as a weapon. Her fingers closed around the cold, rusted handle of a heavy pair of iron shears left on a stone bench. As the assassin reached for her throat, she swung the tool with every ounce of terrified strength she possessed. The metal connected with the man's forearm, tearing fabric and skin. He grunted, recoiling in surprise rather than pain. It wasn't a lethal blow, but it bought her a second. "You're feistier than the dossier said," the man hissed, his voice a low rasp. He stepped forward, knocking the shears from her hand with a casual backhand that sent pain shooting up her arm. He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, exposing her throat. "The Viper sends his regards, little pet." He wasn't here to kill Min-Jae. He was here to break him by taking her. Nia clawed at his gloves, her vision swimming with black spots. She couldn't breathe. She kicked out, her boot connecting with his shin, but he didn't budge. He tightened his grip, pulling a knife from his belt. Then, the night exploded. A deafening crack shattered the air. The assassin's grip instantly went slack. Warm, wet spray hit Nia's cheek as the man collapsed backward, a dark hole in the center of his forehead. Nia fell to her knees, gasping for air, her lungs burning. Min-Jae stood 10 feet away, his chest heaving, a smoking pistol in his hand. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, he was in his shirt sleeves, having clearly sprinted from the house. He didn't check the perimeter. He didn't call for backup. He dropped the gun and fell to his knees beside her, grabbing her face with frantic hands. "Did he touch you?" Min-Jae demanded, his voice raw, his eyes scanning her for wounds. "Nia, look at me. Did he cut you?" I'm okay," she choked out, shaking uncontrollably. Min-Jae pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her neck. But as the adrenaline faded, a colder realization took its place. He looked at the dead man, then at the specific location of the breach. This wasn't a random hit. They hadn't come for money or territory. They had bypassed the main house entirely to find her in the garden. Min-Jae pulled back, his eyes dark with a terrifying clarity. They knew. The walls were no longer high enough. The secret he had tried to bury, that she was his weakness, was out. Min-Jae's bedroom was a study in austere luxury, monochrome gray, cold, and impersonal. But the man pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows was anything but calm. He looked like a caged animal, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, the smell of gunpowder still clinging to him. On the bed lay a thick envelope and a passport. "A car is waiting downstairs," Min-Jae said, not turning to face her. His voice was steel, devoid of the warmth she had glimpsed in the garden. "It will take you to Incheon. There is a flight to Zurich in 3 hours. The account associated with this card has enough to set you up for life." Nia stood near the door, her arms wrapped around herself. The adrenaline from the attack had faded, leaving a hollow ache in her chest. "You're kicking me out. I am releasing you," he corrected sharply, finally turning. His face was a mask of indifference, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "The debt is paid. The contract is void. You are no longer my concern." Because of the man in the garden. Nia stepped forward, ignoring the instinct to retreat. "Because they know. Because you are a liability." Min-Jae roared, the sudden volume making her flinch. "Tonight was a warning. Next time, they won't send just one. They will take you apart piece by piece to get to me, and I will not have that on my conscience." "Get out." "No," Nia said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Min-Jae froze. He looked at her as if she had spoken in a foreign tongue. "Excuse me. I said no," Nia shouted, her voice cracking but gaining strength. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to drag me into your world, strip me of everything, make me rely on you, and then toss me out like garbage the second it gets inconvenient." Inconvenient. Min-Jae crossed the room in 2 long strides, looming over her. "I am trying to save your life, you foolish woman. Do you think this is a game? Do you think I am a hero? I am a monster, Nia. And monsters destroy everything they touch." "I know what you are," Nia yelled back, tilting her chin up, meeting his furious gaze without blinking. "And I know you're terrified. But I am not leaving. I am not some bill you can just pay off to clear your ledger. I am a person. You are a target," he snarled, grabbing her shoulders to shake some sense into her. "If you stay, you die." "Then I die," she breathed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But I won't run." Min-Jae stared down at her, his chest heaving against hers. The anger in his eyes warred with something darker, something desperate and hungry. He looked at her mouth, then back to her eyes, his resolve shattering. "I cannot protect you if you stay," he groaned, the admission tearing out of him. "I didn't ask you to protect me," Nia whispered. "I asked you not to leave me." Min-Jae made a rough, broken sound. His hands slid from her shoulders to cup her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones with bruising intensity. "God help us both." He crushed his mouth to hers. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a frantic, desperate claim that tasted of fear and surrender. Nia grabbed his lapels, pulling him closer, the argument dissolving into the heat of 2 people realizing they were already too far gone to ever turn back. The convoy was meant to be a ghost run, 3 unmarked cars moving her to a safe house in the mountains while Min-Jae dismantled the threat at the source. But the ghost run had turned into a graveyard on the I-95 overpass. Smoke billowed from the lead vehicle, and the back seat of the center car was empty. Min-Jae stood amidst the wreckage, staring at the shattered glass where Nia had been sitting. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A video message. The Busan Viper, holding a knife to Nia's throat, demanding a meeting to discuss terms of surrender. Min-Jae didn't watch the end. He didn't call for backup. He didn't arrange a meeting. He simply crushed the phone in his hand, walked to the trunk of the surviving sedan, and unlocked the weapons case. Negotiation was for businessmen. He was no longer a businessman. The warehouse on the Incheon docks was a fortress of rusted corrugated metal and confident men. Inside, 12 armed guards patrolled the perimeter, relaxed, believing they held the ultimate leverage. They didn't hear the back door open. The first guard died before he hit the floor, Min-Jae's knife severing his windpipe in a single, fluid motion. Min-Jae stepped over the body, his face a mask of terrifying calm. He raised his suppressed pistol. Phut, phut. 2 more guards dropped in the hallway, holes in their foreheads. He moved through the warehouse like a wraith, a blur of violence that wasted no energy. He didn't take cover, he advanced. When a group of 3 men opened fire from the catwalk, Min-Jae didn't flinch. He returned fire with robotic precision. 1, 2, 3. They fell over the railing, crashing onto the concrete below. He kicked open the doors to the main office. The Viper stood behind Nia, using her as a human shield, a pistol pressed hard against her temple. Nia was weeping, her lips split, her uniform torn. When she saw Min-Jae, her eyes widened, not in relief, but in terror at the blood-spattered demon standing in the doorway. One step, The Viper screamed, his bravado cracking as he saw the slaughter behind Min-Jae. One step and I paint the wall with her. Drop the gun, Seo. We're going to talk about the harbor distribution rights. Min-Jae didn't stop walking. He didn't blink. I don't want the harbor. Then what do you want? The Viper yelled, his hand shaking. I want you dead. Min-Jae raised his arm. He didn't aim for the Viper, that was too risky. He fired at the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall directly behind the Viper's head. The tank exploded in a cloud of white chemical fog. The Viper flinched, instinctively turning his head for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Min-Jae closed the distance. He grabbed the Viper's gun arm, snapping the wrist with a sickening crunch, and drove his own pistol under the man's chin. He pulled the trigger. The Viper collapsed. Min-Jae didn't watch him fall. He dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, pulling a shaking Nia into his chest, shielding her eyes from the carnage he had wrought. The sterile rhythm of the heart monitor was the only sound in the private hospital suite. Min-Jae sat in the armchair by the window, bathed in the harsh morning light. He had scrubbed the blood from his skin, but the exhaustion was etched deep into his features, a shadow that no amount of scrubbing could remove. He slid a heavy cream envelope across the bedside table. Beside it lay a check. $1 million. The plane leaves in 4 hours, Min-Jae said, his voice devoid of inflection. Geneva. New identity, new accounts. The Viper is dead, but this life, it does not stop. You need to be far away from it. Nia sat up, wincing slightly as her bruised ribs protested. She looked at the check, enough money to buy her mother the best care in the world, enough to never work another shift again. It was freedom. It was everything she had begged for 3 months ago. Slowly, deliberately, she picked up the check. Min-Jae turned his head toward the window, his jaw tight, unable to watch her leave. The sound of tearing paper cut through the silence. Min-Jae whipped his head back around. Nia was shredding the check, then the plane ticket, letting the pieces flutter onto the pristine white sheets like confetti. Are you insane? He hissed, standing up. Do you have any idea what you are throwing away? I know exactly what it is, Nia said, her voice steady. It's a severance package. It's you trying to buy your way out of feeling something because it scares you. I am trying to save you. I don't need saving anymore, Min-Jae. I need you. She reached out, taking his clenched fist in her hand. His knuckles were still bruised from the warehouse. I am not a debt to be paid off. I am not an employee to be fired. I am making a choice. I choose this. I choose you. Min-Jae stared at her, the walls of his resolve crumbling. He looked at the torn paper, then at the woman who had seen the monster inside him and decided to stay anyway. Slowly, his hand uncurled, his fingers interlacing with hers. I cannot let you go, he whispered, a confession and a vow. If you stay forever. I know, she replied. 6 months later, the clatter of silverware against china filled the exclusive dining room of Seoul's Jungshik. The booth was private, upholstered in deep velvet, not unlike the one where they had first met. A young waiter, trembling with nerves at serving the infamous Seo Min-Jae, reached over to refill the water glasses. His hand shook. The pitcher clipped the edge of the glass, sending a splash of ice water cascading onto the table, dampening the cup of Min-Jae's dark suit. The waiter froze, his face draining of color. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the explosion. I is so sorry, sir. The boy stammered, bowing frantically. I will get a towel immediately. Min-Jae didn't look at the stain. He didn't look at the terrified boy. He didn't even look at his suit. His eyes were locked on Nia, warm and unyielding across the table. He reached out, covering her hand with his own, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Leave it, Min-Jae said softly, never breaking eye contact with his wife. It's just water.